We're going to go through 6 questions here, just meant to help you get ready for our summative next class. So, question number 1, which line in this on this Cartesian plane represents a proportional relationship? Okay, the correct answer was line B. So the reason that it's line B, the one that's being highlighted right here, remember the 2 things that have to be true to be a proportional relationship. One is that it's got to be a straight line, which that is a straight line. And then the second thing that has to be true is it also has to go through the origin, okay, the point 0, 0. And so you can see this is the only one that goes through the point 0, 0 and is a straight line. So that's why line B is the proportional relationship. Okay, question 2. Now, this information is being given to you in a graph. So you'll see you've got a graph here about the number of days and how many tacos are being eaten. So there's one piece of given information, and it's this ordered pair on the line, 9, 2.7. So the question asks you to set up and solve a proportion to determine how many tacos get eaten in 15 days. So when you do this on your own paper, go ahead and set up a proportions like what I've got right here on the screen, and go ahead and solve that. Okay, the correct answer is 4.5 tacos. Now, how I got to that, I started by labeling my proportion. So I'd put tacos on the top and days on the bottom, and it really doesn't matter. I could have done this the other way. You might have put tacos on the bottom. This isn't asking for a unit rate, so it doesn't matter which one's on the top and which one's on the bottom. The given information is that you're eating 2.7 tacos in 9 days. And you're getting that from the table. Remember, the first number, the 9, is you're getting that number from your horizontal axis. Okay, sometimes we call that the x-axis. But if I was to go down, it's kind of hidden there behind the box. But that would represent the number of days. And then the second number, okay, goes with the vertical axis, okay, or sometimes the y. So that 2.7 would be represented over here on the vertical as like the number of tacos that you ate in that many days. Okay, so I've got 2.7, and then I'm trying to find out how many does it take to eat, or how many tacos do you eat in 15 days? So what I need to figure out is, how do I go from 9 to 15? Well, that's not going to be a nice whole number, and so remember, to figure out that scale, what we do is we take the end number, which is 15, and we divide it by the start number, which is 9. I could go through and do that, like get a decimal if I wanted to, or I could just do it as a fraction. So that simplifies down to 5 over 3. But that's what I'm going to be multiplying by, 5 over 3. And if you turn that to decimal, it would have been approximately 1.67. I did round that. But that's what you're going to be multiplying by. So I got to do the same thing. I would take 2.7 times 5 over 3, or 1.67. And that's where I come up with my answer of 4.5. So that's what the problem, not just the answer, but I really want you to think about how, what it means to set up and solve a proportion, because you will be asked to do that. All right. So now we're going to do the same thing, except I'm asking you to find the unit rate, the number of tacos eaten each day. All right. So the answer for this one is going to be, which you've probably already gotten, is 0.3 tacos per day. Now, how did we get to that? First of all, because it's a unit rate, we know that there's supposed to be a 1 in the denominator. And it's saying how many tacos get eaten each day, so that would be per day or per 1 day. So that means my tacos really should be going on the bottom on this one. And, sorry, my days should be going on the bottom. My tacos should be going on the top. All right, and then same piece of given information. It's 2.7 tacos in 9 days. This is probably a little bit easier to see, like how do I go from 9 to 1? Instead of thinking about it in terms of multiplying, I would probably just think, well, I'm going to divide that by 9, which means I need to divide 2.7 by 9, and that's where I get my 0.3. So that's the unit rate in this problem, which is going to help me out in the next question. So the next question What's the equation of this proportional relationship? All right, the answer is t equals 0.3 times d. So on this one, remember the d represents the number of days. I probably should have defined those variables before. And t represents the number of tacos. If you use like different variables, that's totally fine. But the most important thing on this one is that we see the unit rate, 0.3, is appearing in the equation. Okay, so remember from my previous problem, we scroll back there, okay, we're eating 0.3 tacos per 1 day. So if you look at that, like if I want to know how many tacos I eat in 1 day, let's change colors here. So if I was to put 1 in for D, 1 times 0.3 is 0.3. That's 0.3 tacos per day. Now, let's imagine instead of eating 1 taco, I'm going to go back a slide. If that's my unit rate, like let's say I want to know how many tacos I was eating in 10 days. Well, I would have to take that unit rate and multiply it by 10. It'd be 3 tacos per 10 days. And you could see right here, if I was to substitute 10 in for D, 0.3 times 10 is going to be equal to 3. So the equation that represents that line is 0.3D. And that's what the equation would look like. Okay, now we're going to use that equation. Determine how many days it would take to eat 50 tacos. Show your work through using inverse operations. So this will be one where, and we'll be asking you to do this, where we do ask you to actually use the formula. So we want to know how long it's going to take to eat 50 tacos. So you see I wrote my formula down. Now I'm going to substitute that 50 into the formula. It can go in either for T or D. Well, in this case, because it represents the tacos, I'm going to put it in for T. So I'm going to get 50 equals 0.3D. That's the setup, how I want you to start the problem. And now we're going to solve for D. Well, we can do that. That's a one-step equation, right? That's 0.3 times D. So I'm going to take on the left side and divide by 0.3. And I end up getting D is equal to 166.67. Again, that I should change that to a wavy sign because that is going to be an approximation. Okay, I've rounded that to the hundredths place. So that would be my final answer. Of course, you would write that in a full sentence like what you see in the answer key, but that's how you do it mathematically. All right, now this last one is another proportion problem, but it involves fractions. Okay, so the two variables, well, let's go ahead and read it first. It says a recipe calls for 4/5 cups of vinegar for every 2/3 cups of olive oil, and a recipe for salad dressing. If you have 6 cups of olive oil, how much vinegar do you need? Solve this by setting up and solving a proportion. Okay, so what are the two variables that I'm going to be comparing here? I'm going to be looking at vinegar and olive oil. All right, so it's not a unit rate. It doesn't matter which goes which. I'll put vinegar on top because it comes up first in the problem. And I'll put the olive oil on the bottom. And I probably should also write the units. Cups, cups. So they tell you that for every 4/5 cups of vinegar, so I'm going to put the 4/5 up here, you need 2/3 of a cup, of olive oil. And now, if I'm going to kind of scale this ratio up, it says I've got 6 cups of olive oil. So if I want to keep that same ratio, so imagine you're making the recipe, I want to keep the same taste. I'm trying to figure out, okay, well, what is, like, how much vinegar am I going to need? Okay, so what we have to do is we have to figure out 2/3 times what is going to give me 6. If you can do that in your head, that's awesome. This one's probably a little tricky for me to do in my head. So what I would do is I would say, okay, how many times does 2/3 go into 6? And remember, you take the end number and you divide it by the start number to figure that out. Okay, so I take 6 divided by 2/3. Well, that's our keep, change, flip rule. So I'm going to change that to 6 times 3/2. And let's just make that 6/1. That gives us 18 over 2, or 9. So if I take 2/3 times 9, that is going to give me 6. So what I need to do is to figure out how much vinegar I need to do the same thing. So what's 4/5 times 9? 4/5 times 9, or 9 over 1 if it makes it easier, is going to be 36 over 5. You could put that as your answer, but really, like if I'm doing a recipe, I probably wouldn't say 36 over 5 cups. I would change that to a improper fraction, which is 7 1/5. So in this one, I'm going to need 7 1/5 of a cup.